My brother stole the novel I'd spent a decade writing. At his glamorous book launch party, surrounded by reporters and champagne, he leaned in and whispered, "Just be happy for me, Clara. It's a bad look to be jealous." I smiled back, the flashbulbs reflecting in my eyes, and whispered, "Oh, I'm not jealous, Leo. I'm just getting started." That's when the publisher's face went pale as he looked down at the tablet I'd just handed him. I wish I could say I was heartbroken in that moment, but honestly, I wasn't. I was clear. For the first time in my entire life, I was crystal clear. Heartbreak implies a crack, a shattering of something that was once whole. But what Leo had done wasn't a crack. It was an excavation. He'd hollowed me out over years, taking piece by piece, until all that was left was this cold, quiet, unshakable certainty. The news of his book deal had broken 3 months earlier, not from him, but from a headline in an industry newsletter that someone forwarded me at work. Debut author Leo Vanceland's 7-figure deal for haunting family saga, The Ash Tree's Shadow. I remember sitting at my desk, the lukewarm coffee in my mug, forgotten, the sounds of my open plan office fading into a dull roar. The Ash Tree's Shadow, the title I'd whispered to him one night over a cheap bottle of wine when I was feeling vulnerable and trusting. The story of our grandmother's childhood, a narrative I had painstakingly pieced together from faded letters and hushed family stories. My story, my work, my soul, printed on 300 pages and attributed to him. I clicked the link. The article gushed about his profoundly moving prose and his innate understanding of the human condition. It quoted his agent, who called him the voice of his generation. I felt a laugh bubble up in my chest, a hysterical, jagged sound. Leo, the voice of his generation? Leo couldn't write a coherent grocery list without my help. He was a human Pinterest board, beautifully curated on the surface, but with nothing holding it all together underneath. His entire personal brand as an online thought leader was built on essays I had ghostwritten for him, speeches I had polished, and heartfelt captions I had drafted while he was busy taking selfies. I pulled up my personal hard drive, my fingers trembling slightly. The folder was labeled simply Ash. Inside were dozens of documents, drafts dating back to my first year of college, research notes, character sketches, the final manuscript, version 14.7, completed 6 months ago. The file's last modified date was seared into my brain. I had poured my life into that folder. And I had made one critical mistake. A year ago, I had saved a draft to our shared family cloud drive, just for a day, so I could access it from my parents' old computer. I deleted it 24 hours later, but it was too late. The digital door had been left open, and my brother, the smiling, charming viper, had slithered right in. I texted him that day, my thumb hovering over the screen. Me. "Hey, saw the news about your book deal. The Ash Tree's Shadow. That sounds familiar." His reply came back almost instantly, breezy and dismissive. "Leo. Yeah. Wild, right?" Inspiration struck. "You know how it is. So proud. You know how it is." The casual cruelty of it almost took my breath away. He wasn't even trying to hide it. He was daring me to call him out, knowing no one would believe me. The quiet, reliable, behind-the-scenes sister against the charismatic, successful golden boy. It was a battle I was destined to lose before it even began. So, I typed back the calmest 2 words of my life. So proud. But as I sent the text, I wasn't feeling pride. I was feeling a shift in the tectonic plates of my own identity. I closed the article, took a slow, deliberate breath, and created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Evidence. I wasn't just going to be sad about this. I was going to be strategic. I wasn't just going to get my story back. I was going to dismantle the fantasy he'd built on top of it. Brick by fraudulent brick. Now, in case you're thinking I'm some kind of monster, that I should have been more forgiving, let me take you on a quick tour through the museum of my brother's creative theft. Exhibit A, age 14. My meticulously researched science fair project on coastal erosion, complete with a handmade diorama, wins first place. Leo, who had spent the month playing video games, accepts the blue ribbon. He'd swapped our name cards when I was in the bathroom. When I cried, my mom told me, "Don't make a scene, Clara. Let him have his moment. It's good for his confidence." Exhibit B, age 18. His college application essay. The one about overcoming adversity by volunteering at a soup kitchen. It was a beautiful essay. I know because I wrote every single word of it. He'd been too stressed to do it himself. My dad clapped him on the back when he got his acceptance letter. "That's my boy," he'd said. "Knew you had it in you." They never asked about my essays. I was just expected to succeed quietly. Exhibit C, age 25. Leo decides he wants to be a travel photographer. He uses a portfolio of my photos. Stunning landscapes I'd taken on a solo trip through Southeast Asia to land a lucrative sponsorship with a luggage company. When I saw my work on their Instagram page, credited to him, I confronted him. He laughed it off. "Come on, we're family. Your win is my win, right?" he'd said, as if our identities were a joint bank account from which only he could withdraw. So no, this wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. This was his entire operating system. The book was just the grand finale, the masterpiece of a lifetime spent plagiarizing my life. After the announcement, the family group chat exploded with praise. Champagne emojis, crying faces. "Our son, the author," my mom texted. "So proud of you, buddy," my dad added. I stayed silent. I didn't congratulate him. I didn't like a single post. My silence was a small, empty space in a universe of celebration, and they all felt it. 2 weeks later, my mom called. "Clara, honey," she began, her voice syrupy with concern. "We're all a little worried about you. You haven't said a word about Leo's incredible news. Aren't you happy for your brother?" "Did he tell you where he got the idea, Mom?" I asked, my voice flat. A pause. "He said he was inspired by Grandma's stories. It's so lovely that he's honoring her memory." "I'm the one who did all that research," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I'm the one who read her letters. I'm the one who wrote it all down." She sighed, a heavy, disappointed sound I knew all too well. It was the sound of a curtain falling. "Clara, please don't do this. Don't try to steal his thunder. He has worked so hard. You've always been a wonderful writer. We know that. But this is his time to shine. Can't you just be a supportive sister?" Supportive? In our family, supportive meant being invisible. It meant being a foundation that no one ever acknowledged, but everyone stood on. It meant holding up the golden boy so his light could catch the sun, while I stayed in the shade. "Okay, Mom, I said, and the call ended. I sat there staring at my laptop. Inside the evidence folder were now subfolders. Emails with agent, time-stamped drafts, chat logs. I had found old G-chats with my best friend from years ago, where I had outlined the entire plot of the novel. I had time-stamped Word documents that predated Leo's supposed inspiration by nearly a decade. I had the original letters from our grandmother that I had scanned and transcribed, a process that took me months. I wasn't just a supportive sister. I was an archivist. And every good archivist knows you never, ever throw away the primary sources. That night, I reached out to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but a bulldog who specialized in intellectual property and copyright infringement. I found her through a women's creative collective I was part of. Her name was Ms. Davies, and during our video call, she didn't offer sympathy. She offered a strategy. She looked at the mountain of evidence I'd compiled, and a slow, sharp smile spread across her face. "He didn't just take your story, Ms. Vance," she said, her voice like ice. "He took your entire history, and we're going to make him give it back, with interest." The book launch was 3 months after the initial announcement. It was held in a chic, industrial loft space in the city, the kind of place with exposed brick and ridiculously expensive cocktails. The invitation had arrived in a thick cream-colored envelope, Leo's new, arrogant signature scrawled at the bottom of the RSVP card. My initial instinct was to throw it in the trash, but Miss Davies had a different idea. "Oh, you're going," she'd said, "and you're going to be the most gracious, supportive sister anyone has ever seen. Until the perfect moment." So I went. I wore a simple black dress, something elegant and understated. I wanted to look like I belonged there, not like I was there to burn the place down. As I walked in, the air was thick with the smell of success and perfume. Leo was holding court in the center of the room, a glass of champagne in his hand, his arm around his publicist. He was glowing, soaking in the adoration like a plant turning toward the sun. He saw me, and his smile widened. He excused himself and walked over, enveloping me in a hug that felt like a cage. "Clara, I'm so glad you came," he said, his voice loud enough for the people around us to hear. "It means the world to have my big sister here." "I wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice even. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but I kept my expression serene. The thing about people like my brother is that their entire world is built on a narrative. They are the main character, the hero of a story they've told so many times they've started to believe it themselves. Leo's story was that he was a self-made genius, a sensitive artist who had finally found his voice. My role in that story was the adoring, slightly less talented but oh so supportive sibling. To challenge that narrative, especially in public, was unthinkable to him. He was counting on my silence. He was counting on my lifelong training in not making a scene. Let's go back for a moment, because you don't just wake up one day and find your soul has been plagiarized. It's a slow leak. It starts with small things, tiny moments of erasure that you brush off because it's easier than confronting the truth. When we were kids, I used to build these intricate Lego cities. I'd spend weeks on them. Leo would wait until I was finished, then he'd bring our parents in and give them a grand tour, pointing out features he'd supposedly designed. "Leo is going to be an architect," my dad would say, beaming. I'd just stand there, silent, watching him take credit for my work. I learned early on that my creations were only valuable when they were attached to his name. In high school, I was the editor of the literary magazine. I poured my heart into it. I stayed late. I coached younger writers. I designed the layout. The day it was published, Leo grabbed a stack of copies and handed them out to his friends. "My sister runs this thing," he'd say with a dismissive wave of his hand before pointing to a poem. "But check this out. I wrote this." It was a poem I had spent 2 weeks helping him workshop, rewriting nearly every line. But in his version of the story, my labor was invisible. He was the poet. I was just the administrator. My parents were the architects of this dynamic. They saw in Leo a reflection of the success they'd always wanted for themselves. He was charming, outgoing, and ambitious. I was quiet, studious, and introspective. They didn't know what to do with me, so they turned me into a resource for him. "Clara, help your brother with his presentation. You're so good with words. Clara, can you look over this email for Leo? He wants it to sound professional." My skills weren't for me. They were for him. I was the ghost in their family machine, the unseen force that made everything run smoothly for their golden boy. So when he took my novel, it wasn't an aberration. It was the culmination of a lifetime of being told that my work, my voice, my very essence, was simply a raw material to be used for his projects. He didn't see it as theft. He saw it as his right. He'd been taking pieces of me for so long, he probably assumed he owned the whole thing. Back at the party, I could feel my parents' eyes on me from across the room. They were standing with a group of their friends, looking proud and proprietary, as if they had personally written the book themselves. My mother caught my eye and gave me a small, tight smile. It was a warning shot. "Behave. Don't ruin this." I just smiled back and took a sip of water. I needed a clear head. The speeches were about to begin. Leo's agent went up first, then his editor from the publishing house. They lavished him with praise, using words like prodigy and visionary. I watched Leo soak it all in, nodding and looking humble in that performative way he'd perfected. Then he took the stage. The room fell silent. "Wow," he started, his voice thick with fake emotion. "I'm just overwhelmed to see all of you here, celebrating this story with me. It's a dream I never thought would come true." He went on to thank his agent, his editor, his parents. Then his eyes found mine in the crowd. "And I have to give a special thanks to my sister, Clara," he said, his voice ringing with sincerity. The crowd murmured appreciatively. "She's the one who first taught me the power of a good story. She has always been my biggest supporter, my quiet champion. I truly couldn't have done this without her." The applause was deafening. It felt like a physical blow. He was using me, even now, co-opting my silence and framing it as support. He was writing me into his narrative of success, cementing my role as the helpful, invisible sister one last time. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, a cold, controlled fury. This was the moment. I watched him step down from the podium, accepting hugs and handshakes. I let him make his way through the crowd, towards the corner where the senior publisher, a man named Mr. Albright, was standing with a prominent literary journalist. I'd researched them both. Albright had a reputation for integrity. The journalist, a woman named Sarah Chen, was known for her take-no-prisoners exposé pieces. I had in fact anonymously tipped her off an hour before the party that there might be a story here worth sticking around for. I approached the group, a serene smile on my face. Leo saw me coming and put an arm around my shoulder, pulling me into their circle. "And here she is," he boomed. "My secret weapon. Mr. Albright, Sarah, this is my sister, Clara." "A pleasure to meet you," Albright said, shaking my hand. "Leo has told us how supportive you've been." "I've done my best," I replied, my voice sweet as poison. That's when he leaned in and delivered his line. "Just be happy for me, Clara. It's a bad look to be jealous." And that was it. The final permission I needed to light the match. I smiled back, a genuine, dazzling smile. "Oh, I'm not jealous, Leo," I whispered, just loud enough for the four of us to hear. "I'm just getting started." I turned to Mr. Albright. "Leo's right," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I am his biggest supporter. In fact, I'm so supportive that I wanted to make sure you had a copy of the original source material for his beautiful novel." Leo's arm tightened on my shoulder. His smile faltered. "Clara, what are you doing?" he hissed. I ignored him. I pulled out my tablet, which I'd been carrying in my clutch. On the screen was a single password-protected folder. Evidence. I tapped it open and handed it to Mr. Albright. "Here you are," I said politely. "The first draft of The Ash Tree's Shadow, dated 10 years ago. Also, you'll find the complete version history, time-stamped chat logs with my friends discussing the plot development, and scanned copies of my grandmother's letters that form the basis of Chapter 4. My lawyer, Ms. Davies, forwarded the full digital archive to your legal department about 5 minutes ago. I just thought you'd like to see the highlights for yourself." The silence in that corner of the room was suddenly louder than the party raging around us. Mr. Albright's face, which had been jovial and pink, was slowly draining of all color. He scrolled through the files on the tablet, his eyes widening. Sarah Chen, the journalist, was watching all of this with the focused intensity of a predator who'd just spotted its prey. Her hand was already on the recorder in her pocket. Leo let go of me. His face was a mask of disbelief and fury. "This is insane," he stammered, looking from me to Albright. She's unstable. She's always been jealous of my success." "Is that my name in the document properties of that first draft, Leo?" I asked calmly. "Is that my best friend's email address in those chat logs from 2013? Are those my handwritten annotations on grandmother's letters?" Mr. Albright looked up from the tablet, his gaze landing on Leo like a physical weight. He didn't look angry. He looked disgusted. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Perhaps you and I should have a conversation in my office first thing tomorrow morning." He handed the tablet back to me, gave a curt, dismissive nod, and walked away. Sarah Chen stepped forward. She wasn't looking at Leo anymore. She was looking at me. "Clara Vance?" she asked, a small predatory smile playing on her lips. "I think you and I have a lot to talk about. The carefully constructed world of Leo Vance, best-selling author, shattered in that instant." It didn't make a loud noise. It was a silent, catastrophic implosion. My mother and father were rushing over now, their faces etched with confusion and panic. They'd seen Albright walk away. They'd seen the look on Leo's face. "Clara, what did you do?" my mother demanded, her voice a sharp whisper. I told the truth, I said, looking from her face to my father's. For the first time, I told the truth. Leo was just standing there, frozen, as the whisper started to ripple through the party. People were looking at him, then at me, then back at him. His perfect night, his perfect story, was unraveling in real time. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. You ruined my life, he mouthed silently. I didn't feel a shred of guilt. I just felt light. I turned and walked away from him, from my parents, from the wreckage of his stolen dream. As I walked towards the exit, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Miss Davies. Phase 1 complete. Go get some rest. You've earned it. I walked out of that party and into the cool night air, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I could finally breathe. The fallout was swift and brutal. Sarah Chen's article dropped online 48 hours later. It was a masterpiece of journalistic annihilation. It had screenshots of my early drafts, next to passages from Leo's book. It had quotes from my old college friend, confirming our conversations about the novel. It had a devastating no comment from the publisher. By the end of the day, #LeoVans is a fraud was trending on Twitter. My phone blew up, of course. Voicemails from my mother, oscillating between sobbing and screaming. Texts from my father, curt and cold. I hope you're happy. I didn't answer any of them. I put my phone on airplane mode and let the digital storm rage without me. They weren't angry that Leo had stolen from me. They were angry that I had stopped letting him. They were angry that I had exposed the lie they were all so comfortable living in. A week later, the publisher officially cancelled Leo's contract and announced they were pulping the entire first print run of The Ash Tree's Shadow. The 7-figure advance was recalled. The luggage company from years ago publicly terminated their lifetime ambassador relationship with him, citing moral clauses. Every pillar of the life he'd built on my work crumbled to dust. He tried to fight back, of course. He issued a statement claiming this was all a familial dispute and a gross misinterpretation of the collaborative process. He tried to paint me as a bitter, vindictive spinster. It didn't work. The evidence was too overwhelming. Miss Davies had done her job too well. The public had seen the receipts. Literally. His career as a public figure was over. The silence from my family was the hardest part, and the most liberating. There were no more passive-aggressive texts, no more guilt-tripping phone calls, no more invitations to events where I was expected to perform my role as the supportive wallpaper. There was just nothing. I had been surgically removed from the family portrait, and while a part of me mourned the family I wished I had, a much larger part of me celebrated the freedom from the one I was actually in. 2 months after the party, a package arrived at my door. Inside was a small, worn, leather-bound journal. It was from my grandmother's sister, my great-aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in years. There was a short note tucked inside. Your grandmother always said you were the one who listened. She would be so proud that you found your voice. This was hers. I think she'd want you to have it. I opened the journal, and the pages were filled with her elegant script. Stories I'd never even heard before. And I cried. I cried for the story that was stolen, and for the woman who wrote it, and for the fact that I had finally reclaimed it. You know, no one ever tells you that peace can be unsettling at first. You spend so long living in a state of high alert, bracing for the next act of casual cruelty or the next demand disguised as a request, that when it finally stops, the silence is deafening. For weeks, I'd flinch every time my phone buzzed. I'd feel a knot of anxiety in my stomach for no reason. I was a soldier still fighting a war that was already over. But slowly, the silence stopped feeling empty and started feeling like space. Space to think. Space to create without fear of my work being poached. Space to build a life on my own terms, with my name on it. Mr. Albright, the publisher, reached out to me a month after he'd dropped Leo. He was apologetic, embarrassed, and, most of all, intrigued. He'd read my original manuscript, the real one. He said it was raw and brilliant, and deserved to be read. He offered me a book deal. Not as big as Leo's, not yet, but it was mine, all mine. The title of my book is not The Ash Tree's Shadow. I changed it. It's now called Unwritten. It's about a family, and a quiet girl who learns that her voice is the only thing no one can ever truly steal. I don't know what happened to Leo. I hear whispers. He moved away. He deleted his social media. He's working some normal job, out of the spotlight he so desperately craved. My parents still don't speak to me. I think in their minds, the crime wasn't the theft. The crime was my refusal to be a silent victim. And maybe they're right. In their world, that was the biggest crime of all. Sometimes I wonder if there was another way. A gentler way. A conversation, maybe. But I'd been having that one-sided conversation my whole life. And the only person listening was me. I've come to believe that some boundaries can't be drawn in chalk. They have to be carved in stone. My actions at that party weren't about revenge. They were about reclamation. It wasn't about destroying his life. It was about finally getting to start my own. So what do you think? Was I too harsh? Or was it the only way to finally be heard? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like your voice was being drowned out, make sure you subscribe, because there are a lot more stories to tell. And this time, I'll be the one telling them.